That's my mother. Ethan Carter's voice cracked as he stood frozen in the marble foyer of the Manhattan mansion, the insulated food bag slipping from his fingers. The delivery was supposed to take 30 seconds. Drop off the order, say thank you, leave. But then he'd seen it. A photograph, massive, mounted on the wall like it belonged in a museum. A young black woman with braided hair, laughing, her eyes full of light. His mother, his dead mother. Excuse me? The voice came from the spiral staircase, deep, cold, authoritative. Nathaniel Cross descended the stairs in a silk robe, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion as he saw the delivery boy standing motionless, staring at the wall. I said, Ethan repeated, his voice shaking now, that's my mother. Why do you have a picture of my mother in your house? Nathaniel froze mid-step. For a moment, neither of them moved. What did you just say? Nathaniel whispered. Her name was Denise, Ethan said, tears forming in his eyes. Denise Carter. She died when I was 3. And that... He pointed at the photograph with a trembling hand. That's her. I have the same picture, smaller, in my grandmother's apartment in Queens. Nathaniel gripped the banister like he might collapse. That's impossible, he breathed. I'm not lying. Ethan's voice rose. That's my mom. Why do you have her picture? How do you know her? Who are you? Nathaniel descended the remaining stairs slowly, his eyes never leaving Ethan's face. He was studying him, the shape of his jaw, the curve of his nose, the way his eyebrows furrowed when he was upset. How old are you? Nathaniel asked quietly. 17. Why does that... When's your birthday? March 14th. Why are you asking me? Who raised you? Nathaniel's voice was barely audible now. After Denise died, who raised you? My grandmother, Gloria Carter. She's all I have. Why do you... Nathaniel's knees buckled. He caught himself on the banister, his face contorting with an emotion Ethan couldn't identify. Pain, shock, grief. Oh my God, Nathaniel whispered. Oh my God, it's you. What are you talking about? Ethan demanded. How do you know my mother? Why is her picture in your house? Who are you? Nathaniel looked up at him, tears streaming down his face. My name is Nathaniel Cross, he said, his voice breaking. And 17 years ago, I was in love with your mother. He took a shaky breath. Ethan, I'm your father. The insulated bag hit the marble floor, and Ethan Carter, delivery boy, high school junior, kid who'd spent his whole life wondering why he didn't have a dad, stood face to face with a billionaire who just claimed to be exactly that. You just watched a 17-year-old delivery boy discover that the billionaire he's delivering food to has a photograph of his dead mother on the wall. And then that billionaire claimed to be his father. But you don't know why Nathaniel Cross has that photo. You don't know why Ethan grew up without a father. You don't know what happened to Denise Carter 17 years ago that separated this family. And you don't know what Ethan's grandmother has been hiding all these years. If you've ever felt abandoned by someone who was supposed to love you, if you've ever wondered whether the story you were told was the whole truth, then stay with me, because this story is about to show you that sometimes the people we think abandoned us were searching for us all along. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see how this ends. Now, let me take you back to who Ethan Carter really is and why he was delivering food to a mansion he never should have entered. Ethan Carter had been invisible for most of his life. Not the kind of invisible where people look through you, the kind where they look past you, where they see the uniform, the delivery bag, the job, and decide that's all you are. He was 17 years old, 6 feet tall, with his mother's eyes and a smile he rarely used anymore. He worked for Dash Drop, one of those gig economy apps that let teenagers earn money by biking food across Manhattan. He'd been doing it since he was 15, lying about his age on the application because his grandmother needed help with rent. Gloria Carter was 73 years old and still working part-time at a laundromat in Queens. She had arthritis in both hands, a bad hip from a fall 2 years ago, and a stubborn pride that refused to let her grandson drop out of school to work full-time. You're going to college, she told him every night. Your mother wanted that for you. Don't you dare give up on that dream. His mother, Denise Carter. She died when Ethan was 3 years old. Car accident, his grandmother said. Quick, no suffering. He barely remembered her, just fragments, the smell of cocoa butter, a voice singing him to sleep, arms that felt safe, and one photograph, a small framed picture that sat on his grandmother's nightstand. His mother, young and beautiful, laughing at something off camera. That was all he had of her. His grandmother didn't talk about Denise much. It was too painful, she said, and Ethan had learned not to ask too many questions, especially about his father. He wasn't ready to be a parent, Gloria had said once, her voice tight. Some men aren't. Your mother loved you enough for both of them. That's all you need to know. So Ethan had grown up without a father, without money, without answers, but he'd grown up loved. Gloria Carter had given him everything she had, worked double shifts to buy him school supplies, walked him to school every day until he was old enough to go alone, read to him every night, even when her eyes were tired from hours of folding other people's laundry. She was his whole world. And when her health started declining 2 years ago, Ethan had decided he would be hers. He picked up delivery shifts after school, weekends, holidays, summer breaks. Every dollar went toward bills, medication, groceries. He maintained a 3.8 GPA while biking 30 miles a day through Manhattan traffic. He never complained. His mother had wanted him to go to college. His grandmother had sacrificed everything to raise him. The least he could do was work hard. Tonight was supposed to be a normal shift. Pick up an order from a high-end restaurant on the Upper East Side, deliver it to some address in Manhattan, collect the tip, move on. The address had been unusual, a private residence, not an apartment building. When he'd arrived, he realized it wasn't just a residence. It was a mansion, the kind of place that had its own gate, its own security camera, its own intercom system. Delivery for Cross, Ethan had said into the speaker. The gate had opened automatically. He'd walked up a path lined with perfectly trimmed hedges, past a fountain that probably cost more than his grandmother's entire apartment building, to a front door that looked like it belonged in a movie. The door had opened before he could knock. Bring it inside, a voice had called from somewhere within. Leave it on the table in the foyer. Ethan had hesitated. He wasn't supposed to go inside. Company policy. But the door was open, and he could see the table, and it was cold outside, and he just wanted to finish this delivery and get to his next one. So he'd stepped inside, and that's when he'd seen her, his mother, on the wall, laughing, young, beautiful, alive in a way she'd never been in his memories. The same photograph, but massive, expensive frame, professional lighting, mounted like she was the most important person in the world, in a billionaire's mansion. And Ethan Carter's invisible life had suddenly become very, very visible. You're lying. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the marble foyer like a blade. I'm not lying, Nathaniel said, his voice cracking. Ethan, I swear to you, you're lying, Ethan shouted now, backing away. My father abandoned us. My grandmother told me. He wasn't ready. He didn't want us. He left before I was even born. That's not true, Nathaniel said, taking a step forward. That's not what happened. Then what happened? Ethan demanded. Because I've spent 17 years without a father. 17 years watching my grandmother work herself to death. 17 years wondering what was so wrong with me that my own dad didn't want me. His voice broke on the last words. Nathaniel's face crumbled. Nothing was wrong with you, he said softly. Nothing, Ethan. You were perfect. You are perfect. I didn't know where you were. What does that mean? Nathaniel ran a hand over his face, struggling to compose himself. I need to explain something to you, he said slowly, but I need you to listen. Really listen. Can you do that? Ethan stood rigid, fists clenched at his sides. You have 5 minutes. Nathaniel nodded. He gestured toward a sitting room off the foyer. Please, sit down. Ethan didn't sit. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, every muscle in his body screaming to run. But he stayed, because he needed to know. Nathaniel sank into an armchair, looking older than his 40 years. I met your mother when we were both 22, he began. She was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. Smart, funny, kind. We were together for almost 2 years. His eyes went distant, lost in memory. I was broke back then. Nobody. I was working 3 jobs, trying to save money to start a business. Your mother believed in me when no one else did. She used to say I'd be successful someday, that she could see it in me. If you loved her so much, Ethan interrupted, why did you leave? I didn't leave, Nathaniel said firmly. She did. Ethan froze. What? One day, she was just gone. No note, no explanation. She'd moved out of her apartment, changed her number, disappeared completely. I looked for her for months, years. I hired private investigators. I did everything I could. He looked at Ethan with wet eyes. I never found her. I never knew she was pregnant. I never knew you existed. Not until right now. Not until you walked into my house and told me that woman on my wall was your mother. Ethan's legs felt weak. That doesn't make sense, he managed. Why would she leave? Why would she hide from you? I don't know, Nathaniel admitted. I've spent 17 years asking myself that question, wondering what I did wrong, wondering if she stopped loving me, wondering if I'd ever see her again. He stood, walking slowly toward the photograph. And then I got successful, rich, everything she'd predicted. But none of it mattered because she was gone. So I put her picture on my wall, to remember her, to honor her, to never forget the woman who believed in me before I believed in myself. He turned back to Ethan. 3 years ago, I finally found a trail, an old address in Queens. I went there, hoping to find her. But all I found was a grave. His voice shattered. I found out she died 14 years ago, and I never got to say goodbye. I never got to tell her I made it. I never got to... Wait, Ethan interrupted, his mind racing. You went to Queens? Did you find my grandmother? Nathaniel shook his head. No one was at the address I found. A neighbor said the woman who lived there had moved years ago. No forwarding address, another dead end. He looked at Ethan with desperate hope. But you're here now. You're real. You're her. I can see her in your face, in your eyes, in everything about you. He took a tentative step closer. Ethan, I'm not asking you to forgive me for not being there. I'm not asking you to call me Dad. I'm just asking you to believe me when I say, I didn't abandon you. I didn't even know you existed. And if I had known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you. Ethan stared at this billionaire, this stranger who was crying openly, claiming to be his father, claiming to have loved his mother, and he didn't know what to believe. Here's what destroys me about this moment. Ethan Carter has spent 17 years building a story in his head, a story where his father was a villain, a coward, a man who chose to walk away from his own son. That story kept him going. It explained his pain. It gave him someone to blame, but now that story is falling apart. Because what if his father didn't abandon him? What if his father was searching for him all along? What if the villain in the story was actually a victim too? How many of you have held on to anger at someone for years, only to discover the truth was more complicated than you thought? How many of you have blamed someone for leaving when they might have been pushed away? Subscribe if you understand that sometimes the people we hate are the people who loved us most, and the stories we tell ourselves aren't always the truth. 3 days later, Ethan sat in his grandmother's kitchen in Queens, his hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee. He hadn't gone back to the mansion, hadn't answered Nathaniel's calls. The billionaire had somehow gotten his number through the delivery app, hadn't told his grandmother what happened. But the questions wouldn't stop circling his mind. Why did his mother leave Nathaniel? Why did she hide her pregnancy? Why did his grandmother never mention that his father had been searching for them? There was only one person who might have answers. Grandma, Ethan said quietly, I need to ask you something about my father. Gloria Carter went still at the kitchen sink, her back to him. What about him? I met him, Ethan said. 3 days ago. His name is Nathaniel Cross. He's a billionaire now. And he said he didn't abandon us. He said Mom left him. He said he's been looking for us for 17 years. Gloria didn't turn around, but Ethan saw her shoulders begin to shake. Grandma? I knew this day would come, Gloria whispered. I prayed it wouldn't, but I knew. She turned slowly, and Ethan saw tears streaming down her face. Your mother made me promise, she said, her voice breaking. She made me swear I'd never tell you, that I'd keep you hidden, that I'd protect you from him. Protect me? From what? He said he loved her. He did love her, Gloria admitted. That was never the question. The question was whether that love would survive what was coming. She shuffled to the table and sat down heavily across from him. When your mother found out she was pregnant, Nathaniel was just starting to get noticed. Investors were calling. Opportunities were opening up. He was about to become someone important. So your mother got scared, Gloria said. She'd grown up poor. I raised her alone after your grandfather left. She knew what it was like to watch a man choose ambition over family. She was terrified that Nathaniel would resent you, for holding him back. That's crazy, Ethan protested. He could have decided for himself. She was 23 years old and pregnant and scared, Gloria said sharply. She made a choice, maybe not the right one, but she made it out of love for you. She wanted to give him the chance to succeed without the burden of a family he might not be ready for. But he was looking for her for years. Gloria nodded, wiping her eyes. I know. He showed up at our old apartment once, 6 years after Denise died. I'd just moved us here. I didn't know until later that he'd come looking. She pulled something from her housecoat pocket, a folded, yellowed envelope. Your mother wrote this before she died. She made me promise to give it to you when you turned 18, when you'd be old enough to understand. Ethan took the envelope with trembling hands. His name was written on the front in his mother's handwriting. She also wrote one for Nathaniel, Gloria said quietly. It's been sitting in my drawer for 14 years. I never knew how to find him, never knew if I should. Ethan stared at the envelope, his whole world shifting beneath him. Read it, Gloria said. It's time you knew the truth. Here's what Ethan's grandmother understood that we often forget. People make impossible choices when they're scared. They hide, they run, they protect the people they love in ways that don't make sense to anyone else. Denise Carter wasn't a villain. She was a young woman trying to give her son and his father the best possible futures, even if that meant separating them. Gloria Carter wasn't a villain either. She was a grandmother keeping a promise to her dying daughter, even when that promise broke her heart. The only villain in this story was fear. How many families have been torn apart by fear? How many fathers are searching for children they don't know exist? How many children are hating parents who never stopped loving them? Subscribe if you believe that the truth, however painful, is always better than the stories we tell ourselves in the dark. Ethan opened the envelope slowly, careful not to tear the aged paper. Inside was a letter, handwritten, dated 2 weeks before his mother died. My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry. There's so much I wanted to tell you, so much I wanted to explain, but time is running out, and I need you to know the truth. Your father is a man named Nathaniel Cross. When I met him, he was nobody, just a boy with big dreams and no money, and the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. I loved him with everything I had. When I found out I was pregnant with you, I was terrified, not of being a mother, of being a burden. Nathaniel was finally getting his chance. Investors were calling. His future was opening up, and I was so scared that if I told him about you, he'd give it all up. Or worse, he'd stay and resent us both forever. So I ran. I told myself I was protecting him, protecting you, giving you both the chance at the best possible lives. But the truth is, I was scared, and I made a choice that I've regretted every single day since. I tried to go back. 3 years after you were born, I finally got the courage to find him, to tell him about you, to give us all a second chance. But by then, I was sick. The doctors said I had months, and I couldn't do that to him, show up dying with a child he never knew about. So I stayed away, and I made your grandmother promise to keep you hidden, to let Nathaniel live his life without the pain of knowing what he'd lost. It was wrong, Ethan. I know that now. I was trying to protect everyone, and instead I hurt everyone. I kept you from your father. I kept him from you, and I carried that guilt to my grave. But here's what I need you to understand. Nathaniel never abandoned you. He didn't even know you existed. And if you ever find him, if by some miracle you're reading this and you found each other, please don't hate him. And please don't hate me. We both loved you, more than you'll ever know. Find him, baby. Give him this letter. Give him the chance I was too scared to give him, and build the family we should have been all along. I love you forever. Mom. Ethan sat in silence for a long time, the letter trembling in his hands. His mother hadn't abandoned his father. She'd tried to protect them all, and in doing so, had kept them apart for 17 years, all because she was afraid. "There's another letter," Gloria said softly. "For Nathaniel. Your mother wanted him to know the truth too." She placed the second envelope on the table. Ethan looked at his grandmother, the woman who'd raised him, loved him, kept an impossible secret for 14 years. "Why didn't you find him?" he asked. "After Mom died, why didn't you tell him about me?" Gloria's face crumpled. "I was scared too. He was becoming rich, famous. I was an old woman in Queens with a 3-year-old and no proof. I thought he'd think I was lying, or that he'd take you away from me. I'd already lost my daughter. I couldn't lose you too." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I kept you from your father because I was afraid of losing you, and that was selfish. I should have been braver." Ethan squeezed her hand. "You raised me," he said quietly. "You loved me. You sacrificed everything for me. That's not selfish, Grandma. That's everything." He looked at the second envelope. "But I think it's time we stop being afraid." The next evening, Ethan stood outside Nathaniel Cross's mansion for the second time. But this time, he wasn't delivering food. He was delivering something far more important. Nathaniel opened the door himself. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face haggard, the look of a man who hadn't slept in days. "Ethan," he breathed, "you came back." "I have something for you," Ethan said, holding out the yellowed envelope. "It's from my mother. She wrote it before she died. She wanted you to have it." Nathaniel's hands shook as he took the envelope. Will you come inside while I read it?" Ethan nodded. They sat in the same room as before, but everything felt different now. The tension was still there, but it was mixed with something else. Hope. Nathaniel read the letter in silence. Ethan watched his face, saw the shock, the grief, the understanding dawning in his eyes. When he finished, Nathaniel was crying openly. "She was trying to protect me," he whispered. "All those years, she was trying to protect me." "She was scared," Ethan said. "So was my grandmother. Everyone was so scared of hurting each other that they ended up hurting everyone." Nathaniel looked up at him. "And you? Are you scared?" Ethan considered the question. "I was," he admitted. "When I first saw that picture, when you told me who you were, I was scared that this was some kind of trick, that you'd be disappointed in who I am, that you wouldn't want me either." "Ethan, but I'm not scared anymore," Ethan continued, "because I read my mom's letter too, and she wanted this. She wanted us to find each other. She wanted us to be a family." He took a breath. "I'm not asking you to be my dad overnight. I don't even know what that would look like, but I'm asking if we can try, if we can get to know each other, if we can be something, even if we have to figure out what that something is." Nathaniel stood slowly and crossed the room to where Ethan sat. "I've spent 17 years looking for you," he said, his voice thick. "I built all of this." He gestured at the mansion around them. "And none of it meant anything because I didn't have anyone to share it with. I have money and success and everything I ever dreamed of, but I didn't have family." He knelt in front of Ethan, looking up at his son. "I don't want to buy your forgiveness. I don't want you to love me because I'm rich. I just want a chance to know you, to be part of your life, to make up for 17 years of missing you." Ethan felt tears rolling down his own cheeks now. "My grandmother," he said. "She's all I've had my whole life. She's the one who raised me. I can't just leave her." "I would never ask you to," Nathaniel said firmly. "Your grandmother is your family. She raised the son I didn't know I had. That makes her family to me too." He stood, extending his hand. "So what do you say, Ethan Carter? Can we start over? All of us, as a family?" Ethan looked at that hand. The hand of a billionaire, a stranger, his father. Then he took it. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think we can." Epilogue. 1 year later, Ethan Carter, now Ethan Carter Cross, graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and a full scholarship to Columbia University. His grandmother Gloria moved into a brownstone in Brooklyn, purchased by Nathaniel, managed by a full-time caretaker who made sure her medications were always on time and her pantry was always full. She had dinner with her grandson and his father every Sunday night without fail. The delivery app where Ethan used to work now had a new scholarship program, the Denise Carter Memorial Fund, providing college money for young workers supporting their families. It was funded by Nathaniel Cross, administered by Ethan, mother's dream made real. Nathaniel still had the photograph of Denise on his wall, but now it sat next to a new one, a picture of Ethan at his graduation, his grandmother on one side, his father on the other. 3 generations, one family, finally together. Some nights, Ethan would stand in front of his mother's photograph and talk to her. "We found each other, Mom," he'd whisper, "just like you wanted. It took 17 years, but we found each other." And somewhere, he believed, Denise Carter was smiling, because her son had finally come home. Here's what this story teaches us about family. It's not about blood. It's not about money. It's not about never making mistakes. It's about showing up, again and again, even when you're scared, even when you've been hurt, even when you don't know how it's going to turn out. Denise was afraid, and she ran. Gloria was afraid, and she hid. Nathaniel was afraid, and he searched. And Ethan was afraid, and he came back anyway. Fear separated this family for 17 years, but love, imperfect, terrified, stubborn love, finally brought them together. Maybe you're estranged from someone who loves you. Maybe you're holding on to anger at someone who was just as scared as you were. Maybe you've been waiting for the other person to make the first move. Subscribe if you believe that it's never too late to find your way back to the people who matter. That fear is a terrible reason to stay apart, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is knock on the door of someone you've been running from and say, "Can we try again?" Because family isn't about being perfect. It's about being there. The end.